So it opens in a pretty brutal way, but not in an over-the-top flashy sense. Just a quiet, snowy battlefield absolutely carpeted with bodies. One man is standing there like it's just another workday. Then he turns around and notices someone he clearly didn't expect to see, a black-haired young guy he calls Ash. And you can tell from his face alone that this was not on his schedule. The older man's first reaction isn't anger or panic, it's more like mild confusion. He's like, "Aren't you supposed to be on a subjugation mission right now?" Meanwhile, Ash, who we soon learn is actually Aster Elmheim, is standing there wounded, serious, and completely done with everything. He calmly says he came to kill him. No dramatic monologue, just straight to the point. What makes it sting is how little the father cares. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't get defensive, he's almost bored. Aster, on the other hand, finally lets everything spill out. He accuses his father of using people like tools and throwing them away once they've served their purpose. And then he calls him father, which immediately tells you this isn't just a battlefield disagreement, this is years of resentment finally boiling over. The response? Ice cold. His father basically says, that's what someone wingless is for, and calls him a foolish son. And that's when the story properly introduces Aster as our protagonist, someone who's been labeled useless his entire life and is now trying to fight back against that label. From there, the story zooms out a bit and explains House Elmheim. They're a huge deal, top-tier noble family, strongest military house on the continent, sworn protectors of the royal family. Lord Roderick, the father, is their leader and the only person with the full power of the 7 wings. He's practically a walking legend. Ironically, he once saved Aster from freezing to death in a blizzard on a whim, which is how Aster even ended up in the family. And Aster took that debt very seriously. He followed every order, never questioned anything, and basically tried to earn his place the hard way. But life in the Elmheim household wasn't exactly warm. There's a memory of him holding a broken wooden sword while the other boys mock him, telling him not to get full of himself just for being there. The wing crest on his back proves he has magical potential, but cruel twist, he's the only one who can't actually use magic. So naturally, his brothers nickname him Wingless. Subtle bunch. Still, Aster doesn't quit. He trains non-stop, sword practice, push-ups in the rain, pushing himself way past what anyone expects from him. Not because he's trying to prove them wrong out of spite, but because he genuinely believes that if he works hard enough, one day it'll all be worth it. Which, yeah, that optimism hurts in hindsight. We briefly jump to a past mission where Aster and his companions are moving through a snowy forest. He senses something off, hides behind a tree, and realizes they've been surrounded. It's quiet, tense, and clearly not a coincidence, just another breadcrumb pointing to betrayal. Back in the present, Aster demands to know why his loyalty was rewarded like this. His father doesn't even pretend to justify it. He just says tools shouldn't have expectations, and that Aster's role is finished. That's the moment Aster snaps. He charges straight at him with his sword, openly calling himself an idiot for believing in him all this time. The attack lands, kind of. Just a small cut on the father's face. Barely an inconvenience. Before Aster can do anything else, 2 figures appear and restrain him with magical chains. Surprise, his brothers. They jump in with glowing red swords and start attacking him while he's completely immobilized. It's less of a fight and more of a group beating, and they're not exactly subtle about enjoying it. One of them mocks him, saying a wingless person will always be wingless, while another comments that groveling suits him. Real charming family dynamics. Lying there in the snow, beaten and chained, Aster finally asks the question that's been eating at him. Why take him in at all if he was always going to be thrown away? His father crouches down and crushes that last bit of hope without hesitation. He tells Aster he was never useful as a person. Then he grabs his hair, forces him to look up, and reveals the truth. He only cared about the power of the 7 wings that were inside him. Naturally, Aster has no idea what that even means. That's when his father drops the final blow. Aster's mother was the real asset. She carried the seed necessary for his plans, and Aster was just the container. No affection, no family, just a long-term power investment. As his father walks away, Aster reaches out weakly, fingers sinking into the snow, trying to stop him or at least get answers. Nothing happens. Just silence, cold, and the weight of everything crashing down at once. Left there staring at the falling snow, Aster starts wondering what his life was even for, and whether all that effort, pain, and belief ever meant anything at all. So right when you think, okay, this is probably it for him, everything suddenly flips. The world goes white and warm, and Aster's first thought is basically, did I die? Which is fair, considering how the last scene went. But then he notices snow again, and he's being held by someone. That's when the confusion really kicks in. He looks around, totally disoriented, and then looks down at himself, and yeah, something is very wrong. His body is tiny. Like, tiny. He lifts his hand, stares at it, and slowly realizes he's not just weak or injured, he's a literal baby. Not a metaphorical rebirth, not a dream. Full-on newborn status. Then it gets darker. The woman holding him is completely lifeless. No movement, no warmth, she's gone. Before he can even process that, voices cut through the blizzard. Men on horseback are searching the area, and one of them has this sharp, commanding presence. You can practically hear the authority before you see him. They're looking for a woman who ran off with a baby meant for Roderick. And that's the moment it clicks. The name hits him like a brick. He connects everything at once: the blizzard, being saved as a child, Roderick's plans, the 7 wings. He realizes the horrifying truth: he is that baby. This isn't just going back in time, this is the very beginning of everything. Golden light starts shimmering around him as his sense of reality shifts, and honestly, even he seems to think the situation is ridiculous. Like, of all the ways to get a second chance, being reborn as a helpless baby in a snowstorm was not on the list. He decides to worry about confirming the details later, because one thing is very clear: if he stays there, Roderick's people will take him, and history will repeat itself. So he does the only thing he can do: he crawls. Which sounds simple until you remember he's a baby, in a blizzard, with no protection. His tiny hand glows with golden energy as he drags himself across the snow, completely out of breath, grunting because his body barely knows how to function yet. Every movement hurts, his limbs feel like they're burning, and he leaves this long, heartbreaking trail behind him. Still, he refuses to stop. After a lifetime of being used and discarded, he makes a quiet promise to himself that he will survive this time. Images of his miserable future flash in his mind, and even in a body that can't walk, he's filled with pure, focused rage toward Roderick. There's something almost darkly funny about it: this tiny baby mentally swearing revenge on one of the most powerful men in the kingdom while face-planting into snow every few inches. Eventually, his strength runs out. He crawls until he bumps into someone's feet and just collapses. That's when a small white-haired girl spots him and calls out to her father. A gray-haired man steps forward, the Viscount of House Highfried. He picks up the baby, completely baffled about why a child would be out here in the middle of a blizzard. As he looks around, he notices the long trail in the snow and realizes the baby crawled that entire distance on his own. That's when his expression shifts from confusion to genuine shock. Meanwhile, Aster, now safe in someone else's arms for the first time, just sleeps peacefully, his face calm and almost serene, like his body finally decided it could rest for a moment.
Like, share.
So the next part gets a little surreal before it snaps back into chaos, in a very baby Aster kind of way. He's in this dark, almost dreamlike space, trying to figure out where he is, when he sees another child. A red-haired baby shows up like it's welcoming him, and golden feathers are drifting around everywhere. It feels symbolic and important, but before he can unpack any of it, he jolts awake. Now he's in a crib. Instant panic. He's thinking about that dream and vaguely wondering if he just saw something he wasn't supposed to see, when he realizes 5 kids are standing around him, staring like he's some kind of new attraction. One of them picks up her little sister and tells her not to be naughty, which only makes things more confusing from Aster's perspective. He has no idea where he is or why he's being surrounded by children like this. One of the girls tries to hold him, probably just being nice, but Aster immediately goes into survival mode. He struggles, wriggles, and somehow manages to leap out of her arms, something no one, including himself, expects. The kids just freeze, stunned, while he starts crawling away with pure desperation on his face. From the outside, it probably looks like a dramatic baby escape attempt. From Aster's point of view, it's life or death. A little girl shouts at him to stop, but he's already committed. While crawling away, he reaches out instinctively, and suddenly golden energy pours out of him. His eyes glow, his magical aura flares up, and then, he starts floating. He's completely shocked. Like, wait, this is actual magic? Already? He hovers there in midair, stunned by his own power, and then, because of course, he loses control. The magic cuts out, and he starts falling fast. Panic sets in immediately. He braces himself for a very undignified baby crash. Luckily, the Viscount shows up at the perfect moment and catches him. The man looks down at the child in his arms, clearly realizing this baby is not normal in any sense. Aster, meanwhile, recognizes him instantly. This is Hyford, the Viscount from Lodric's domain, technically part of the Elmheim family. That realization brings a wave of mixed feelings. As he looks around at the mansion, he wonders if he just escaped one Elmheim house only to land in another. We get a quick reminder that Hyford Mu Elmheim was the head of a Viscount branch of the family, known alongside his brother as the 2 wings who protected the royal family. And Aster remembers something crucial: this man and his entire family die later in a civil war. That's the final confirmation for him. This really is the past. A genuine second chance. Though his relief is immediately undercut by the fear that he's still within reach of the Elmheim power structure. While he's spiraling internally, a woman gently takes him into her arms and wonders out loud if his magic just went out of control and made him float. She smiles warmly, hugs him, and tells him he doesn't need to be afraid anymore. And Aster just freezes. He's not used to kindness without strings attached, and it clearly hits him hard. The Viscount watches quietly, thoughtful as ever. Then he speaks up and says this child has immense power. To back it up, he lifts Aster's shirt, revealing a crest. In the mirror's reflection, both adults go still. They immediately recognize it. The symbol of the 7 wings. Aster sees it too, and panic slams into him. His eyes glow gold as memories flood back, Roderick's words, the cold way he was held, the truth about being raised just to have that power taken from him. Suddenly everything makes sense. The wingless insult, the betrayal, the plan to steal what was always his. Inside, he's furious. How dare Roderick call him wingless when he was the one who took his wings in the first place? The woman notices the sudden shift in his expression and asks the Viscount what he plans to do with the child. Aster immediately thinks, this is bad. If they hand him back to the Elmheim family, everything is over. He needs that power for himself, for survival, and for revenge. So when the Viscount calmly says they'll adopt him, it completely short-circuits Aster's brain. The Viscount gently pats his head and says the child is still a fledgling who can't fly on his own yet, and that he'll take responsibility for him until the day he can. Aster just stares, eyes wide, trying to process words he never expected to hear in any lifetime. So right after that heavy adoption moment, it turns out the kids weren't as sneaky as they thought. The Viscount quickly realizes all of them were eavesdropping the entire time. One of the children sheepishly admits they were just worried about the new baby, which honestly makes the whole thing kind of sweet instead of awkward. They all gather around their mother, who's holding the baby now, and you can feel that this isn't just a political decision anymore, it's already turning into a real family moment. One of the daughters steps closer, curious, while the mother looks down at the baby with this calm, affectionate smile. Then she officially names him Aster, saying he's like a new star born into their family. It's simple, warm, and exactly the kind of thing baby Aster probably never experienced in his first life. Fast forward 10 years, and the scene shifts to a bright, peaceful day outside the Viscount's mansion. Lord Heifert is older now, greeting subordinates at the entrance like the respected noble he is. Then we get the proper grown-up protagonist entrance. Aster steps out of a carriage, sword at his waist, calm and confident. He helps a red-haired young woman out and calls her sister Alphen. If you remember, she's the same kid who pinched his nose when he was a baby, which makes the whole knightly gesture a little funny in hindsight. She thanks him, totally unfazed, and the two walk together with serious expressions. They're heading to the sword dance assembly, basically a noble showcase where every martial family comes to flex. It's part tournament, part political theater. Everyone's watching, everyone's judging, and reputations are made or broken there. As expected, the gossip starts immediately. Other nobles whisper about the Viscount's family and the adopted boy with no clear background. Some of them clearly enjoy stirring the pot, wondering how much the Viscount plans to damage the Elmheim name by bringing Aster along. One even openly points him out. Very classy. Alphen notices the tension right away and tells Aster not to worry about it. With her fist clenched, she reminds him that in this place, the weak get crushed without mercy, which sounds harsh, but she's not wrong. The two of them stand side by side, both clearly ready to deal with whatever nonsense comes their way. Their father joins them and explains that this cold reception is basically the Viscount family's current position among the nobles. He admits he brought Aster here on purpose, to show him the reality of the world he's stepping into. Then asks if he's disappointed by all this hostility, but Aster just smiles and says he doesn't care about their attitude at all, and that answer genuinely makes his father laugh, proud and relieved. That's when we get a quiet contrast with Aster's past life. His first social debut back then ended in public humiliation in an arena, something that clearly left a scar. This place holds bad memories, but this time, things are different. He has his 7 wings, his strength, and people who actually stand beside him. As they walk toward the grand hall together, Aster's golden eyes shine with determination. From a window above, 2 young nobles watch them with open disdain, but Aster feels that hostility and just ignores it. No flinching, no hesitation, just steady steps forward. Inside his head, he's already decided, this time, his debut won't be a joke or a tragedy. He's here to make it count. Subscribe. Comment. So the scene really leans into how this world works. Knights, swords, and reputation are basically everything. For nobles, strength isn't just respected, it's currency. If you're good with a sword, your family shines. If not, well, enjoy the whispers. We get a duel in the arena as an example. 2 young nobles clash, the crowd glued to every movement like it's a live scoreboard for prestige. One light-haired guy cleanly disarms his opponent with a sharp, efficient strike. No wasted motion, very polished. When he raises his sword, you see the metal glowing on his hand. That's the big deal symbol here. It's not just a trophy, it's proof that you're someone. The kind of thing nobles quietly envy and loudly praise. Watching from above, Aster's family comments that the place hasn't changed at all. Still stiff, still suffocating. Alphen admits she finally gets why her sisters skipped the event entirely. Aster, meanwhile, isn't just uncomfortable, this place hits a nerve. Memories from his past life rush back, especially his humiliating defeat in this exact setting. You can tell it still bothers him, even if he doesn't want to show it. Alphen notices his expression shift and asks if he's nervous because it's his first sword dance festival. Aster shuts that down quickly. He says it's not nostalgia, it's disgust. Which, fair. Alphen is understandably confused, because that is not the normal first social event jitters response. Their father heads off to a meeting and leaves Aster in charge of Alphen. She protests since she's older, and Aster immediately fires back by calling her clumsy, which feels very on-brand sibling behavior. Before leaving, the Viscount gives Aster some very noble advice: go make connections. Then he adds the much more important warning: do not let anyone find out about the 7 wings. After he leaves, Aster quietly thinks that hiding overwhelming power in a room full of bloodhounds is easier said than done. Almost immediately, he feels it, the stares. Cold, hostile, curious in the worst way. The whole hall feels like it's judging him. He sighs, internally exhausted by how hard it is to socialize when everyone already dislikes you. Still, that determination kicks in. When Alphen asks where he's going, he casually says he's off to make some friends. Which is funny, because the look on his face says this might turn violent. He walks up to a group of young nobles lounging around, very relaxed, very smug. One red-haired guy immediately snaps, asking who Aster even is. Aster stays completely calm and introduces himself politely, even calling the guy Brother Dallas. Then he drops his full name, Aster F. Elmheim, and says he's his younger brother. That lands hard. Dallas is visibly shocked, and someone helpfully explains that Aster is the Viscount's adopted son. Dallas immediately sneers and says that explains why Aster dares to use the F in his name. And that's when it clicks for Aster, Dallas and Brian, 2 people who betrayed him in his past life. Instead of fear, he just feels nothing impressive. He realizes how pathetic it is that he once found them intimidating. Now they just look like kids playing noble dress-up under bright lights. Alphen snaps him out of his thoughts and tries to pull him away, saying they've already greeted them and should go. Then Dallas calls Alphen by name. She stiffens instantly. He mocks her, asking if she's still hiding behind her father, and then tries to order her to join them, pulling the whole main house authority card. Alphen shuts that down immediately, saying there's no master-servant relationship between their families. She tries to leave, but Aster notices her hand trembling. That's when Dallas really crosses the line. He insults her father, saying he couldn't even protect the king, took the blame, and lost his arm because of his own brother. Then he tops it off by saying he's glad he doesn't have a loser's blood in his veins. Alphen explodes, demanding he take it back. Dallas responds by spitting his drink in her face and telling her father must be ashamed of having a daughter like her. He even throws in a snide comment about wearing red next time so she won't notice getting wet. Absolute trash behavior. And this is where Aster finally steps in. He walks forward calmly, almost thoughtfully, wondering why he was so worried before coming here. Turns out, he was afraid he wouldn't feel anger anymore when facing them again. Realizing that he does feel it is oddly comforting. He pats Alphen's shoulder, grabs a bottle from one of the nobles like it's no big deal, and tosses it into the air to get Dallas's attention. Before anyone can react, Aster slices the bottle cleanly in midair. Wine, well, grape juice, splashes all over Dallas. Aster casually looks at his sword, licks it, and comments that it's grape juice. Then, with a grin that's way too satisfied to be polite, he says it suits a bratty noble like him perfectly.
Like, share.
So right in the middle of all that tension, the story suddenly throws us back 3 years, almost like Aster's brain hitting the rewind button. We see a much younger Aster in the middle of training, with his father urgently telling him to hold on during a fight. One of his sisters is crying, asking if he's trying to hurt everyone, and honestly, it doesn't look like an overreaction. The golden energy pouring out of him is completely out of control, enough to scare the other kids nearby. The power of the 7 wings just erupts, way stronger than anyone expected, including Aster himself. It's not a cool, heroic moment, it's messy and dangerous. The Viscount looks genuinely worried, not proud. He's standing there wondering whether that kind of strength can even be controlled, and whether either of them is capable of mastering something that destructive. It's one of those quiet moments that makes you realize this power isn't just a blessing, it's a loaded weapon. Then we snap back to the present. A guard bursts into the Viscount's meeting room with very bad timing and even worse news. In the middle of a conference, he announces that the children of the main family and the Elmheim branch are currently dueling. That gets instant reactions. Both family heads go serious immediately, and the Viscount doesn't waste a second. He gets up and rushes out. His daughter sees him flying past and asks what could possibly be so urgent, which says a lot on its own. Out in the hall, the situation is already drawing attention. One noble actually smiles, clearly enjoying the drama, and comments that fights between brothers of the Elmheim house aren't exactly an everyday attraction. The noble and the Viscount observe carefully, fully aware that the outcome of this clash could shift things politically. Other nobles watch with that mix of concern and excitement that only comes from knowing chaos might break out, but not their chaos. Meanwhile, Dallas is fully leaning into villain mode. He calls Aster a fool for picking a fight with the Duke's house and then proudly shows off his 4-wing crest, basically saying, look at the power gap. He demands Aster show his own crest and mocks him when he doesn't, implying he must be ashamed. Aster, completely unfazed, fires back that showing off a simple pattern is embarrassing, which is such a casual insult it almost hurts more. Dallas absolutely loses it. Furious that Aster isn't scared, or even impressed, he snaps at the audacity of being challenged like this. Aster then raises the stakes. If he wins, Dallas has to apologize to his sister. Dallas agrees immediately, but adds his own condition: if Aster loses, he becomes Dallas's dog forever, because nobles apparently peak emotionally at age 12. Dallas charges first, sword swinging as the fight explodes right there in the hall. Steel crashes against steel, and Aster blocks the attack cleanly, without much trouble. He plants his feet, steady and focused, gripping his sword like this is exactly where he's meant to be. Then Dallas starts relying on his crest. He channels the power of the four wings, wrapping his blade in a red magical aura, and unleashes a much heavier, boosted strike. Watching from a distance, Alphen panics and screams Aster's name, clearly terrified that this just escalated way past a petty noble spat. So while the fight is getting serious, the noble is watching from the sidelines, and honestly, he looks entertained more than concerned. He even smiles a bit, thinking that his swordsmanship is still rough around the edges, but that it doesn't really matter. In his mind, raw magic makes up for bad technique anyway. He explains it in a very noble, very condescending way. One wing's magic is like a tiny candle flame, barely anything. 4 wings? That's basically an explosion waiting to happen. Back in the hall, Dallas is feeling himself way too much. He taunts Aster, asking where all that earlier confidence went and mocking him for hiding on defense. He demands Aster stop stalling and show his power already. Then he winds up what's clearly meant to be a finishing blow, gripping his sword with both hands like this is the dramatic end of the match. One of the nobles even mutters that the fight is basically over. Except, not really. Right as Dallas brings his sword down, Aster's blade lights up with a golden aura. He meets the attack head-on, blocks it cleanly, and the two energies slam into each other. Dallas's face just freezes in shock. This was not supposed to happen. Aster, completely calm, tells him he talks too much, then casually kicks him away like he's clearing space in a hallway. Dallas goes flying. Aster stands there, steady and composed, golden aura blazing around him, and you can feel that this isn't just about the fight anymore. He thinks about the 10 years he spent learning magic in the Viscount's house, years that were all building toward this moment. Not for show, not for pride, but for revenge and self-closure. He doesn't give Dallas a second to recover. Aster rushes in with a string of fast, precise strikes, overwhelming him completely. Dallas can barely defend and ends up on his knees. One of the other brothers watching can't believe what he's seeing. This is Dallas, getting pushed back like this? Desperate, Dallas unleashes another surge of power, this time mixed with green and yellow energy, blasting outward. He shouts that he's a 4-wing and can't possibly lose to someone like Aster. Aster doesn't even react to that claim. He just stares at him coldly and swings again, sending another crushing attack straight at him. The nobles watching are stunned. People start whispering that there are still monsters like this in the Elmheim family. Aster keeps pressing forward, not letting Dallas breathe for even a second. Up above, the Viscount looks worried now, and Alphen is visibly shaken. This is starting to cross from duel into something worse. As Aster attacks, a memory flashes through his mind, being gravely wounded by his brother in his past life, hearing that same cruel laughter as he lay defeated. That memory flips a switch. His golden aura explodes outward, stronger than before, and now even Dallas looks genuinely terrified. He starts yelling for Aster to stop, realizing he's completely outmatched. From above, Aster's family shouts his name, trying to pull him back before he goes too far. Then it happens, a massive blast of energy sends Dallas crashing across the hall. The noble, arms crossed, just watches, completely unfazed. Aster finally stops. He walks forward, drives his sword into the ground right in front of Dallas, and leaves it there. Dallas, flat on the floor, is shaking. Aster tells him to come dressed in rags next time and coldly calls him cousin, every word dripping with contempt. He turns to look up at his family, who are staring at him in disbelief. Calmly, he declares that he's no longer the wingless Ash. That weakness is gone, and realizing that seems to clear something heavy from his mind, like a knot finally untied. Then everything shifts. Aster's eyes suddenly glow with a faint red tint as he senses something deeply wrong. He looks toward the top of the stairs and sees a figure wrapped in a dark red, oppressive aura. The presence alone feels malicious. And then he recognizes him. Cold sweat forms as Aster realizes the man staring down at him with pure contempt is his former father, Roderick, standing there like a shadow that never really left. Subscribe. Comment. So right after that insane upset, everyone's still trying to process what they just saw. Like, the Viscount's youngest kid just folded the main family's third son. You can practically hear the noble's brains buffering. And before anyone can even start whispering excuses, the atmosphere just drops, because the Lord shows up. And yeah, this is not the kind of guy who lets embarrassment slide. Aster immediately feels it. That pressure, that something very bad just entered the room vibe. Meanwhile, Dallas, who was just seconds ago getting humbled into the floor, suddenly finds his courage again. He's lying there laughing like a cartoon villain because, in his head, Daddy has arrived and everything's about to be fixed. Lord Rodri steps in, and the mood is ice cold. He's not shouting, not raging, just staring at Aster like this whole situation personally offended him. And Aster recognizes him instantly. Not just as his uncle, but as the man who betrayed him in his past life. Dallas, completely undone, crawls over and grabs his father's leg, crying and begging for help, pointing at Aster like, this guy did it, punish him. He's full on desperate mode. And then, this is where everyone realizes Rodri is built differently. The Lord calmly crushes his own son's hand into the floor. No warning, no hesitation, just brutal, clean punishment. Dallas screams. The nobles freeze. His brother can't even react. Everyone's horrified because this isn't discipline, it's a message. Rodri basically humiliates him on the spot, asking why he's crying after disgracing the family like that. It's one of those moments where the room goes completely silent because nobody knows where to look. The Viscount snaps and yells at his brother to stop, but Rodri doesn't even acknowledge him. He just keeps tearing Dallas down, saying he doesn't even deserve to hold a sword. That's when Aster steps forward. Which, honestly, takes guts bordering on insanity. He calmly says, "Hold on, my cousin still hasn't apologized to my sister like he promised." You can almost hear jaws hitting the floor. Rodri mocks him immediately, basically saying, "Do you really think you're an Elhim just because you were taken in?" And Aster doesn't flinch. He says he's the Viscount's son and learned what pride and knighthood actually mean from him. No yelling, no bravado, just steady confidence. Which somehow makes it hit harder. Rodri isn't impressed. He turns his attention to the Viscount's family upstairs and accuses Aster of staining the main family's name. At this point, even the noble realizes this is way past the family spat. Other nobles start murmuring that this can't be brushed off as kids being kids. One guy is clearly enjoying the chaos way too much, smiling like he brought popcorn. Someone brings up the old story, how Aster's father once lost an arm for disloyalty. Rodri then asks Aster what he's willing to sacrifice for this level of disrespect. And Aster answers without fear, this wasn't a tantrum or a squabble, it was a duel. Insults were answered with a sword. And he's not giving up anything. That's when Rodri's eye actually twitches. Which is never a good sign. He draws his sword and straight up challenges Aster to a duel. The kid's 10. Everyone knows this is insane. Even Aster shocked, he clearly didn't expect the Lord himself to step in. But before anyone can stop it, Rodri launches forward at absurd speed and slams his blade down, shattering the floor and carving out a crater like gravity. Personally hates that spot. Alphen is terrified. The Viscount is shouting. And at the last second, the Viscount jumps in attack. After the exchange, the Viscount rushes to Aster. Aster struggles to his feet. He's injured, bleeding, clearly at his limit, but his eyes are still burning. No fear, no regret. Rodri looks at him from a distance with pure contempt, then just turns around and leaves, like the whole thing wasn't worth another second of his time. The Viscount catches Aster as he starts to collapse, calling his name, panicked. Aster, barely conscious, says he protected his sister and kept the promise. And that actually hits. The Viscount praises him, saying he was magnificent. Upstairs, the nobles start talking again. One of them comments that Rodri used a pretty childish method to resolve things, but also admits it worked. Letting Aster win without destroying the main family's reputation was the only balance. Another admits he was genuinely worried the Elhim house was about to split in two. And then Rodri drops this ominous line about a storm approaching that could divide the world, because of course someone has to say that. Back in the hall, the Viscount holds Aster while Alphen rushes over, frantic and relieved all at once. The kid's battered, exhausted, but still standing, and somehow, in a room full of monsters, he managed to shine.
Like, share.
So after all that chaos in the hall, the story actually takes a breather. We jump to a bright, calm day outside the mansion, and the contrast is kind of funny. Sun's out, birds probably chirping, and Aster is out here casually bullying trained knights with a wooden sword. A group of knights are watching the sparring match, and you can tell they're not expecting much at first. Then Aster dismantles his opponent with zero effort. No flashiness, no drama, just clean, efficient moves. One knight straight up says he's impressive, and another points out how scary that is considering the kid is only 10. Someone even brings up the "oh yeah, this is the kid who crushed Lord Roderick's third son" part, which honestly explains a lot. There's this quiet, shared satisfaction among the branch family knights. One of them even smiles and says it's refreshing, since the main family's been stepping on them for years. You can tell Aster's win didn't just boost his own reputation, it lifted everyone around him a bit. While he's training, Aster's clearly thinking long-term. He knows he showed enough at the sword dance assembly to shut people up about the Viscount's house being a joke. But that wasn't the real goal. His real target is still the Elhim main family, and especially his former father. That's why he pushed himself so hard against Dallas back then. It wasn't pride, it was testing the ceiling of his power. He remembers the clash with Lord Roderick and immediately grounds himself. At his current level, he'd lose. No question. The wing crest only shows how much magic you could have, not how much you can actually use. He's got 7 wings on paper, but if he can't control them, it's just wasted potential. And Aster hates wasted potential. Back in the present, he snaps into focus, eyes glowing gold, and just steamrolls the remaining knights one by one. At some point he literally breaks a knight's sword and yells who's next, which is kind of hilarious considering everyone else is already on the ground questioning their career choices. That's when Alphen shows up from a distance and calls him out for causing trouble again. She tells him their father's calling. Aster agrees and starts walking over, stepping past the defeated knights like it's totally normal. Then he notices her outfit and pauses, because apparently this is not something she usually wears. He asks about it, genuinely surprised, and she casually says that everything needs balance, and that he inspired her not to stay the same. It's one of those vague older sister answers that sounds deep but leaves him more confused than before. She even steals his wooden sword and tells him they'll train together later, which immediately shifts into playful sibling energy. Aster just laughs and asks her to go easy on him next time. Later on, he heads to the Viscount's office. The mood flips again, quiet, serious. His adoptive father asks him to sit, and after a moment, starts talking about how it's been 10 years since Aster joined the family. He places a ring on the table, and Aster's confused until the Viscount drops the reveal. That ring is proof of the next head of the Viscount's house. Aster was stunned instantly, but the Viscount doesn't sugarcoat anything. Their house is in a fragile position. Even as a branch of Elheim, they have land, people, and responsibility. They can't leave the future undecided forever. Aster asks about his sisters, and the Viscount says he'll tell everyone at the academy. Aster immediately thinks of Malfa and Kudo and internally admits they're probably not going to be thrilled, especially Kudo, who already dislikes him just for being a boy with 7 wings. And that's when Aster surprises everyone again. He stands up and refuses. Not dramatically, just honestly. He says he can't control his magic yet, that he almost hurt his own sister because he was immature, and that he's not ready to lead anyone. The Viscount doesn't interrupt or argue. He just watches, quietly reassessing the kid in front of him, clearly thinking, yeah, this one's different. Then he smiles and says the ring was meant as a reward for the assembly anyway. He opens another box and casually reveals something way more Aster-coded. Inside is Graham, the family's magic sword, a devouring blade, and more importantly, the only weapon capable of controlling the power of the 7 wings. Aster's eyes widen, because suddenly, the thing he's been worrying about this whole time, the gap between power and control, has an answer sitting right in front of him. Subscribe. Comment. So after offering Aster the sword, the Viscount doesn't take him to a fancy training hall or anything like that. Nope. He brings him straight into the forest. When Aster asks why they didn't just use the proper training grounds, his father casually says it's a precaution. And then he basically implies, you break things. Which, fair. Out there, he finally explains what this sword really is. Graham isn't just some family heirloom you hang above a fireplace. It's traditionally passed down to the eldest son, and when the Viscount activates it, the thing starts glowing with this intense red light. Aster is staring at it like, what exactly did I just sign up for? And then he notices something kind of important. There's no blade. It's just a hilt. But when his father channels mana into it, a blade of red energy forms out of nowhere. That's when it clicks. Graham isn't a normal sword. It's basically potential given shape. The blade only exists because the wielder completes it with their own power. To demonstrate, the Viscount swings once, and the forest just suffers. A massive wave of red energy tears through trees like they're decorative props. There's wind, dust, debris. Honestly, this is why they didn't go to the training hall. Aster probably would have been banned permanently. The Viscount warns him that this sword has a history. If your power isn't enough, it won't politely refuse you. It'll drain you. Then he hands it over and asks if Aster wants to try. Of course he does. Aster grabs it with both hands and pours his mana in. Gold energy erupts around him as he tries to shape his own blade. And he does form one, but immediately things go unstable. His mana starts flowing into the sword on its own, not because he's guiding it, but because the blade is pulling it. Then a massive golden beam shoots straight into the sky like someone just launched a signal flare to the gods. Back at the mansion, knights in the courtyard see it and start arguing whether a comet just fell or something shot upward instead. Alphen takes one look and goes, yeah, that's definitely him. Which says a lot about how normal this has become. Back in the forest, Aster is holding the sword, slightly out of breath, but grinning. He calls it extraordinary. His father corrects him gently. It's not the sword that's special. It's him. There's never been anyone in their lineage with a 7-wing crest. Once Aster learns to control it, he'll surpass even Lord Roderick. The Viscount even admits, quietly to himself, that the boy may outgrow both him and his brother. But then comes the realistic part. Power like that draws attention, envy, fear. People will try to use him. Others will try to remove him. If word spreads about 7 wings, things won't stay peaceful for long. So he tells Aster to get stronger now, while he still can. Aster takes his hand and promises he won't live weakly anymore. He'll master the sword. He'll master the wings. 3 days later, the mood shifts again. The Viscount's household is welcoming 2 daughters back home. The red-haired one, Kudo, makes a dramatic entrance, striking a pose and asking for hugs like she's returning from a grand tour. Instead, the younger girls run straight past her and hug the calm, white-haired Malfa. Kudo just stands there with her arms open, betrayed by reality. One of the little sisters complains that Kudo always messes up their hair when she hugs them. She denies this very unconvincingly. Then she spots Alphen near the stairs and immediately locks her into an overly tight hug instead. Alphen protests, of course. Malfa calmly asks their father where Aster is. The Viscount starts answering, and the moment Aster's name comes up, Kudo's expression shifts. Meanwhile, in the forest, Aster is still wrestling with Graham. He unleashes another red blast, barely dodging his own unstable energy as it rips through trees. He's sweating now, breathing hard. He can create the blade, but keeping it stable is pushing him to his limit. He wonders what it would take to be like his father, so composed, so controlled. That's when a voice comments that he's really outdone himself. Kudo walks out of the trees like she's been watching the whole time. Aster blinks and asks if she's back already. She immediately complains that he didn't come greet her, calls him cold, teases him for thinking he's special after the sword assembly. He fires back lightly, reminding her that she was the only knight apprentice to receive the honorary medal this year, so she's not exactly unnoticed either. She shrugs that off, saying if she couldn't even achieve that, she'd never be worthy of succeeding their father. Then she bluntly asks if he refused the successor position because of her. Aster internally blames their dad for stirring things up and explains he just didn't feel ready. That's it. No grand sacrifice, no hidden motive. But Kudo doesn't seem satisfied. She turns away, saying he knows what her dream is and still acts like this. He's left standing there, confused at how the conversation went sideways so fast. Then she attacks him. No countdown, no warm-up. Her blade sends a slash of energy flying at him, slicing clean through a tree when he barely dodges. He demands to know what that was about. She says it's been a while and she's testing him. Next time she won't hold back. He tries to argue that his sword is unstable. She shoots back that enemies won't accept excuses on the battlefield. If he hesitates, he'll be crushed. And before he can overthink it, she charges again. Aster knows he's already at his limit trying to control Graham. But if she's serious, and she clearly is, he can't stand there half-committed. So he releases his energy and meets her charge head-on. Their blades collide, energy crashing outward, and in that split second he realizes she's not playing around at all. Subscribe. Comment. So the fight in the forest? It escalates fast. 1 second they're trading blows, the next the entire area looks like it's been hit by a localized natural disaster. Trees are splintered, the ground's torn up, and there's smoke and frost and debris everywhere. Kudo is completely in her element. She's swinging like she's been waiting months for this exact moment, eyes lit up, almost thrilled. She actually compliments him mid-fight, basically admitting his swordsmanship hasn't dulled at all and that he's keeping up with her even after all the extra refinement she got at the Night Academy. Which, coming from her, is real praise. But then she immediately pivots and roasts him. She calls his sword control pathetic, says his magic handling is non-existent, and she's not saying it calmly, she's backing it up with hits that send him flying. At one point she slams down so hard he barely regains balance midair. Aster, trying to breathe through it, admits she's as relentless as ever. And while he's watching her from a distance, he starts thinking about how she's always been like this, always challenging him, always calling things unfair. He wonders if it's because he's the only male with succession rights, or because of the 7-wing sigil. Maybe both. To him, she feels like a living storm that shows up whenever he gets comfortable. He's mid-thought when she just disappears. He snaps back to reality barely in time to block another strike. She tells him flat out that he's not fit to be the next head of the house. Cut to the mansion, Malfa is calmly asking their father if leaving those two alone was really wise. At this rate, she says, that little sibling spat could produce an actual casualty. The Viscount, very composed, insists they're good rivals and it won't go that far. Malfa sighs like she's heard that before. Then she shifts the topic. Why exactly were they summoned back from the academy? Their father pulls out a letter. It's a summons from the Elmheim main house. The elders want to see their grandson. Malfa immediately understands how serious that is. The Viscount admits that at worst, they might lose Aster. Back to the forest, because the siblings definitely haven't toned it down. Aster is barely defending at this point, trying to argue that he already refused the succession. Kudo fires back that refusing doesn't make it better. Their father apparently finds that refusal disagreeable too. Then she slams her sword down so hard Aster awkwardly bends under the weight and internally compares it to fighting a troll with a giant mallet, which is honestly fair. He manages a clever trick, tilts his blade sideways, redirects her momentum, and briefly throws her off balance. He tries to get a word in, but she cuts him off immediately and calls him out for trying to run. Then she unleashes another burst of power. He gets blasted back hard enough to cough up blood. She tells him bluntly that being good with just a sword makes you third-rate. Being good with just magic makes you second-rate. First-rate means mastering both, and right now, she's disappointed. Then she breaks it down logically. The wing sigil difference is about mana capacity. Each wing is roughly a 3-fold gap. She has 5 wings. He has 7. On paper, he should overwhelm her in output and stamina, yet he's avoiding direct magical clashes and retreating to swordsmanship. She asks him straight, does he distrust his own power that much? And then she hits the nerve. She brings up what happened 3 years ago, when he went berserk. That word sticks. Aster freezes for a second. Afraid? Of his own 7 wings? He never consciously thought that, but as he looks at Graham, it clicks. Maybe he's been subconsciously limiting himself. Maybe the instability isn't just the sword, maybe it's him trying to suppress the magic instead of trusting it. Meanwhile Kudo's blade is glowing brighter and brighter. She tells him he has everything she ever wanted. If he's going to let it rot out of arrogance or fear, he should just give it to her. And she charges. This time, Aster doesn't overthink. He takes a breath and swings. A burst of red energy slams into her full-force strike and actually knocks it back. She's genuinely surprised. He thanks her, calmly, says his eyes are open now. Then he rushes her, without even forming a proper blade. She blinks, confused. Is he really charging him like that? She braces, assuming she still has mana to spare, and immediately corrects herself because of course she does. Aster, meanwhile, realizes something important. He can't fully control the 7 wings yet. That's true, but for one moment, one impact, he doesn't need sustained stability. He doesn't need a perfectly maintained blade. He just needs everything at once. So he drops the idea of holding a consistent energy form. Instead, he focuses all his magic into the instant of contact. She dodges the first attempt and pushes back, half mocking that he actually managed to think of something. But he keeps coming. He tells her he has no intention of wasting this second life he somehow got, not this power, not this sword, not this family, because these are things he never had before. Behind him, his wings flare into existence. Kudo mutters, confused about the second part, but there's no time to process it. Aster leaps upward, and then he vanishes. For a split second she loses him. He reappears right in front of her. This time the blade fully manifests, solid, glowing, stable. Her eyes widen, not theatrically, just enough to show she didn't expect that. And Aster swings, telling her he's done holding back.
Like, share.
So we cut back to the mansion, and Kudo wakes up in bed, blinking at the ceiling like someone who definitely remembers getting hit by something dramatic. First thing she does is look around suspiciously and ask where she is. Malpha's there, calmly closing the curtains, like this is just another morning. Kudo sits up, immediately remembering the fight. She asks what happened with her match against Aster. Malpha, very sweetly, tells her that Aster carried her back and said she simply fell asleep mid-match, probably fatigued from traveling. Completely innocent explanation. Kudo looks down at herself, frowns, and quietly goes, "No, that's not right," and she replays the last moment in her head. She remembers thinking she'd been cut down. For a split second, she genuinely believed Aster had finished the strike. But when she thinks carefully, she realizes what actually happened. Right before impact, he dispelled the blade. Only the leftover magic brushed past her, enough to overwhelm her, not enough to harm her. Which makes sense. There's no way he'd kill his own sister. Still, in that one instant, she'd felt death. That sticks with her. Then she smiles a little to herself and basically admits he's annoyingly thorough. Smaller than her, but thorough. She grabs her sword and suddenly has energy again. Asks Malpha if Aster's heading out again. Throws off the bedsheets like she's about to march back into battle because she refuses to accept the result of that match. Malpha casually drops the real bomb instead. Aster already left. There was a summons from the main house, addressed to him. He departed with their father just moments ago. Kudo freezes. She had no idea. Her voice explodes across the mansion in pure outrage at not being told. Meanwhile, Aster and the Viscount are already in a carriage heading toward the House Elmheim main residence. The mood inside is quiet. Aster's staring out the window, not exactly nervous, just thoughtful. His father breaks the silence and explains who they're going to meet, the elders. The former heads, senior figures, the ones who stepped down but still hold influence behind the scenes. The kind of people who don't need titles to control things. The rulers of the shadows, basically. What unsettles the Viscount is that these elders never showed interest in Aster before, not once in 10 years. Why now? Aster answers calmly, it's probably because of the sword dance incident. The old men of Elmheim care about reputation above all else. More than money, more than honor. Maybe even more than their lives, and anyone who stains it, gets removed. His father stares at him and asks where he even heard something like that. Aster hesitates and brushes it off vaguely, somewhere, before, then casually adds that he's prepared for execution or banishment. Which is not something you want to hear from your 10-year-old. The Viscount asks if he's really fine going without an escort. Aster says it's fine. In fact, he'd originally planned to leave as soon as his sisters arrived anyway. He thinks it would be easier for Kudo if he wasn't around, so she can relax, stretch her wings, as he puts it, avoiding his father's eyes a little. He thanks Kudo, though, sincerely. Because of her, he's starting to understand how to handle Graham. He feels like he can draw out more of the 7 wings now, and then he says something that makes the air heavier. Even if something happens to him, his father shouldn't intervene. He wants to survive on his own. The Viscount starts to respond, but before he can, a loud voice cuts in from outside. Both of them look stunned. Aster leans out and sees Kudo literally hanging onto the moving carriage. He's shocked, asks if she ran all the way there. Which, she probably did. She climbs him like this is perfectly normal and immediately scolds him for leaving without saying a word. She heard about the summons, the grand elders of the main house. Even she and Malpha have never been summoned. That alone tells her how serious this is. The Viscount gently reminds her that bringing her along to the main house isn't appropriate. She says she understands. She knows she and Malpha were called home to manage things while father is away. She understands all of it. But this summons? It means the situation is dangerous enough that they're being cautious. Malpha even said Aster might not return. Aster smiles and downplays it, says he's just going to talk, though internally, he admits whether he comes back safely is another matter. Then Kudo points at him and says something very direct. She hates him, because he's a man, because of the 7 wings. Because he's treated specially, because he's stronger than her, because he acts older than he should. She lists it all out plainly. But even so, he's family. No matter how strong he is. No matter how mature he acts, he's still her little brother. She stands up, opens the carriage door while it's still moving, and tells him to come back properly so they can have another match. She won't forgive him if he quits while he's ahead. And then she jumps off. Aster just stares out the window at her like he's not sure what just happened. As the carriage rolls on, she's standing there waving at them repeatedly. His father smiles softly and comments that she's a good rival. Aster doesn't argue. He knows she was worried. He smiles faintly to himself and silently promises he'll come back. Subscribe. Comment. So they arrive at the main residence of House Elmheim, and the atmosphere shifts immediately. The gates open without delay. Soldiers line up like this was rehearsed. One of them formally greets Highfried and informs him that the Grand Elder is already waiting. Highfried casually says he knows the way. Clearly this isn't his first time walking these halls. But the guards don't budge. They've been ordered to escort both him and Aster directly. Aster clocks that instantly. This isn't a sentimental family reunion. No grandfatherly doting happening today. Still, when he looks up at the castle, there's this small, quiet thought. He hasn't been back in a long time. There's something nostalgic there. Not soft, exactly. Just familiar. They walk through the training grounds toward the main hall. Highfried leans over and tells Aster, in that tired father tone, to keep his temper in check no matter what's said. Aster gives a very noncommittal answer that basically translates to, that depends on them. Which earns him a headache sigh. Highfried starts trying to explain who they're about to meet, but Aster's attention drifts. He notices the knight's training. He also notices someone missing, Darius. Considering his dominant hand was crushed not long ago, that absence makes sense. His father snaps him back to the present by holding out his sword to be surrendered. Aster stammers that yes, of course he was listening, and hands his own weapon over. He promises he'll behave, quiet as a clam, he says, because his sister told him to come back safely. Highfried doesn't look entirely convinced. The doors to the hall open, and their arrival is announced like a stage performance. Seated at the center is the sixth head of the main house, Zenith A. Elmheim, an old man, relaxed, almost amused. Around him are a collection of senior figures, the kind of men who technically retired but somehow still run everything. Highfried kneels. He addresses Zenith properly. Aster kneels too, but he's studying the room. He recognizes a few faces from the sword dance festival. One of them even gives him a friendly little wave. Aster, meanwhile, is scanning for someone else, Roderick. He's not there. Before he can ask, Zenith casually remarks that Roderick isn't attending. As the head of the Knights serving royalty, he's too busy for vulgar matters. So the old guard is handling this instead. Aster processes that quietly, gathering this many high-ranking executives without the current head present. That's not casual. Zenith may be retired, but he's clearly still heavy enough to bend the room around him. Highfried asks what these vulgar matters are supposed to be. Zenith laughs and brings up the sword dance festival. Apparently, Aster made quite a scene. Highfried responds carefully. Roderick already resolved that issue. It was managed publicly. Closed. Some of the elders don't look impressed. They start circling the real complaint. Adopting a child of unknown origin was already questionable, they say. It might have been tolerated if he'd stayed quiet, but now he's shown his fangs at the main house, and Highfried won't escape punishment either. That's when Aster stands up, instinctively. He says it was all him. His father had nothing to do with it. Highfried immediately signals him to stop. And, surprisingly, Aster actually does. One of the elders mutters that the boy lacks discipline, trying to interrupt adults, after all. Another elder rises and shifts the tone. He explains that they command 12,000 knights. That name, Elmheim, carries weight. But internally, the knights aren't unified. There are factions, ambitions, people aiming for the top seat. Stability matters. They want assurance that Aster isn't a future liability. Then Zenith taps the floor with his sword and reminds Highfried of something old and ugly. Years ago, when Highfried failed to protect his liege, Roderick severed his arm here as punishment. A stain that was cleaned. This time, Zenith suggests a simpler solution. Cut off the boy's head. That will settle things. Highfried refuses, calmly. If he must kill his own child, he says, he would rather take his own life instead. That lands heavier than anything else so far. Zenith considers that for a moment. Then, almost casually, he decides, fine. If that's the case, Highfried should die. His wife, his daughters, Aster, the entire Viscount house will be dissolved as of today. And just like that, swords are drawn. Soldiers surround them. It's almost administrative in how smoothly it happens. In the middle of that circle, Aster speaks up, not loudly. Just clear. He asks why the Grand Elder seems so afraid. If they're scared of a dog biting, then a pack of grown men trembling together isn't a good look. Banishment? Execution? Fine, do what you want with him. But if they touch his family... He tears his shirt open. Highfried freezes. Across Aster's back, fully visible, is the emblem of the 7 wings. The reaction is immediate. A soldier blurts out in shock. They recognize it. Aster lifts his shirt higher, making sure there's no misunderstanding. He apologizes inwardly to his father for not staying quiet like he promised. Then he says it plainly, if they intend to harm his family, those 7 wings will become Elmheim's enemy. Hey everyone, quick update. I'm trying something new with my uploads. Instead of single chapters, I'll be dropping 5 chapters in one video so it's smoother and more enjoyable to watch. Uploads will likely be once a month, but each video will have more content and better flow. Hope you guys enjoy this new format, and thanks for sticking around. Let me know what you think of this format.